Hey everyone, welcome to Judging for the Win. I'm Dave, and this is my daily rule. Today's question was suggested by a viewer. Nick plays a time stop and splices on Everdream. Amy responds with Plagiarize targeting Nick. What happens? Alright, so the first important fact that we'll need to answer this question is that when you splice onto a spell, the effects of the main spell always happen first, and then after that you get the effects of the spell that you spliced onto it. Therefore, Nick will end the turn, and after that he will draw a card. Now, another important fact that we'll need is that once a spell on the stack starts to resolve, all of its effects will happen even if that spell gets removed from the stack in the process. This is relevant because that's exactly what will happen to the time stop. One of the steps in the process of ending the turn is for every spell and ability on the stack to get exiled. This means that Nick will still perform the instruction to draw a card even though the time stop spell that has that instruction will no longer be on the stack at the time he does so. As an aside, the time stop is the only card that's getting exiled here. Ending the turn only exiles objects that are on the stack. Because of how Splice works, the Everdream will be safely in Nick's hand throughout this entire process. And because of how responding to spells works, the Plagiarize will be in Amy's graveyard before the time stop starts resolving. And speaking of, now we're ready to talk about how Plagiarize fits into all of this. Based on what I already said, it might sound like Nick should get to draw because the end of the turn instruction happens before the draw a card instruction. But it turns out that's not how it shakes out because there's actually a difference between the game term ending the turn and what the normal English meaning of those words might signify. After exiling everything from the stack, the next step in ending the turn is to perform state-based actions. After that, the current step or phase ends and the game skips straight to the cleanup step. This is the last part in the process of ending the turn, so the Everdream instruction to draw a card will be performed after this, as the first thing that happens in that cleanup step. Amy will steal this draw because until end of turn effects wear off during the cleanup step, and the time when that happens hasn't come yet. After this, all the steps of the resolution of time stop have been completed, so the game will go on to do all the stuff that normally happens during the cleanup step. The first thing that happens in the cleanup step is for the active player to discard down to their maximum hand size. Since Amy drew a card just before this, there's a chance that this could be relevant here. After discarding comes the spot where Plagiarism's effect officially ends. If any permanents have damage marked on them, that damage wears off at the same time as part of this same game event. Since Plagiarize has worn off, that means if Nick is able to draw a card after this point, he'll actually get it, not Amy. But how could this happen? Players don't normally get priority in the cleanup step, so it's difficult, but I think I've got an idea. The next thing that happens in the game is that the game checks for state-based actions. If any are performed, that means there will be another round of priority, during which Nick would have the opportunity to cast Everdream from his hand. Unfortunately, this is kind of a big ask, and complicating things even further is that the state-based action needs to happen during this specific SBA check that happens during the cleanup step, not the one that I mentioned earlier that happens as part of the process of ending the turn. It's kind of tough to contrive a scenario where this happens, but I'm sure some enterprising commenter will be able to work something out. As for me, I'm going to take the easy way out because it just so happens that if any triggered abilities have triggered and need to go on the stack during the cleanup step, that would also create a round of priority too. There are a lot of cards with abilities that would trigger when Amy draws or discards a card, so you can just pick your favorite one. Now, the game doesn't like giving people priority in the cleanup step, so anytime that happens, the game will not proceed to the next turn right afterwards. Rather, a new cleanup step will be created, and if any player gets priority during that one, the process will repeat. Fortunately for Nick, only the active player needs to discard due to hand size in the cleanup step, so it doesn't matter how many cards he has after taking his cheeky draw. He won't have to discard if he makes this play. All the stuff that normally happens in the cleanup step will also happen in these extra cleanup steps that the game generates, but typically there's a lot less stuff going on during them. So let's assume that no abilities trigger and no state-based actions happen. In that case, Amy's turn will finally end in the colloquial English sense of the word, and Nick will be able to begin his. If you'd like some more practice dealing with the cleanup step, I recommend my videos on Shifting Woodland versus Stranglehold, or Monument to Endurance versus 8 cards in hand, or Ending the Turn versus Miracle. But that's all I have for you today. How did you do? Join me again next time for another daily ruling. Until then, I hope you have a great day.